I think that's a question that answers itself, right? Yeah, for sure. You don't have to be crazy. It's not a competition, but it definitely seems to be going off the rails in many places, in many situations. Welcome to the local 666-269 podcast. Your host, mint flavored shoe man. I definitely put my foot in my mouth a few times online. Not just here. I mean, here we expect that. We want that. This is what I'm supposed to do, is just to say exactly what is in the stream of consciousness that comes out of my mouth without any sort of filter. I think that's the train wreck you're looking for. And it's a lot easier to do and produce without sort of second guessing or doubting anything else that's going on. On the other hand, you carry that energy over into sort of the precarious, matronly world of certain social platforms, especially if you're following a lot of empowered, independent, strong athletes and females and so on. Definitely, they don't take a lot of crap, and so if you have some impulse control issues, as people with ADHD do, oftentimes you might leave a comment that is not great. I try to avoid that at all costs, and so I actually DM'd this person who I admire, who is a tremendous athlete, in probably the elite class for what they do. And in this case, I thought we had enough of a rapport that I made sort of a side joke in correlation to some content they produced about a haircut. And I thought I was stating the obvious because I thought for sure that would come up anyway, but it was weird. And I was duly informed, so as a dude, don't make it weird. Take it back. And so I did, of course. I had to acquiesce because, when someone does set boundaries and doesn't want to deal with that kind of nonsense, then you have to respect or honor that. I mean, I could have doubled down and said that, okay, I'll take that as a yes for the answer, which I think is probably the case, but that again is my own projection. And so my own weirdness. It's a minefield. It really is. And it's developing because for a lot of people, it is putting themselves out there. If the social currency in the past for things like Facebook and Instagram, where the social currency is to show off those valiances that cause FOMO, fear of missing out from others. You only show like the best stuff. I mean, especially like when it comes to weightlifting, we haven't yet to sort of normalize, shit lifting or videos of failed lifts and so on. I mean, it's trying to be normalized because that's part of the process. Not everything is going to be a PR or some sort of competitive record. If you're like me and you document nearly everything as a way to have improvement, a lot of the stuff you're going to do is not going to be something you want to celebrate about. And I would say that the new social currency is this vulnerability of this coming back to people sort of taking the chance at appearing to be vulnerable in a way that is not trying to really garner attention. Granted, people are, of course, playing crocodile tears or making up stories and stuff to edge out a little bit of money or some sort of attention if they got some kind of issue. But generally speaking, my experience is that most people are sincere when they are having kind of a midlife crisis breakdown, and it's usually related to finance, for the most part. Even the breakups and the relationship issues, if we dig in there, we'll find that there's money issues as well. They seem to go hand in hand, of course. That's not great. I think that where we're at, where we're still struggling to keep up with inflation and these massive amount of CEO, board member salaries and so forth, and the people down at the bottom don't get any of it. And I know for boomers and conservatives and libertarians or whatever else, I know they get really sort of cringy and uptight about any of the aspect of empowering workers. But fuck, just look at the data, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the data between what people make as wages versus what we have to spend over the period of just in my lifetime. How can a single person in any place that's worth a damn living afford to live by themselves? It's nearly, I would say, nearly impossible. And so people have to live together. Roommates. You know, when you leave home, it's having your own place is part of the juice, if you can get it. For some people, they're uncomfortable, they go right into a relationship. And now, because of the roommate thing, if people on the other side of the equation here, like conservatives and fundamentalists and religious evangelicals and so on, are upset that all these young people are cohabitating together, living in sin, even though they might not be doing anything, is completely platonic. But I know from my own experience, when I was a young person, I was going to move in with two girls. And at that time, there was some concern from the Mormon church that I was a member of that, well, you can't do that. Like, why not? I'm not banging. I'm not sleeping on them. Like, no, just can't. Like, oh, okay. So sometimes it's the writings on the wall that you think, okay, maybe this is not quite for me. I had similar experiences when I was studying the Quran. Had a lot of debates with the Oman in the temple that I was studying at. Again, to understand, have a deeper understanding of other sort of religions and cultures. I mean, I also studied in the university as well. So it's interesting to see how these sort of people that have a lot of stringent rules related to morality as theocrats or as religious organizers and having controlled or guided religion in this case, seem to have a lot of hangups about these kind of things. And so they're always dead set against any sort of divergent way that's coming at it. So when they get upset by the fact that we have 27 genders and so on, I would say that a lot of that has to do with the economics, not just the education or the so-called straw man argument about grooming and all this other crap that they bring up. That's not the case. It has a lot to do with the economics. We have gutted so much out of our public education system where we're just sort of teaching standardized core classes without anything else except being directed towards some kind of examination. The holistic approach is missing. That's why we get a lot more people getting homeschooled and a lot more people doing charter school, because they want those components that were built into our education system. We kind of got the tail end of it until the human conservative time bomb of Ronald Reagan came in and started, throwing things aside. But we can pin it on Reagan, but we got to dig a little bit deeper in the woodpile there, and we find Dick Cheney and, of course, Donald Rumsfeld, going back to their little machinations with the Ford administration and Nixon as well. So that the precursors for the rot in that ship have been there for quite a while, even in my lifetime. So if we put together an economic system that keeps our wages suppressed and inflation to buy basic necessities such as food and shelter, and so on, continue to rise, it doesn't give us a lot of cushion to save or to invest and so on. And so you get really caught up in the rat race. If you're trying to break out on your own, unless you're willing to live in a rural area, and now that a lot of people are working from home, they find that to be a better sort of use of the money that they are earning online, if it's possible, and to live in a place that at least has good enough of a connection to maintain this kind of nonsense, then you probably can go into business. Of course, if you want to go and see anything, you've got to drive into town. So if we force our younger generation to live together stacked up like cordwood, whether it is male, female, and I would just say it's a part of the extension of the exploration of sexuality, along with information. And we have to think about how much hormone that we have displaced in our waters. Fantastic article many years ago in Wired magazine about a young research scientist who was testing the water across country. And it was amazing the amount of like excreted drugs and prescription drugs and female hormone. I mean, it was basically changing the sex, not only in the fish that were exposed to it, but people living in the area. And so when I hear this sort of cisgendered, complaints about, the sissification of America, guys are more feminine now and so on. And I say that there's probably multiple reasons why that could be. And the fact that their features themselves, along with sort of the garbage, standard poverty American diet, where fast food is cheaper than sort of eating healthy. What's up with that? That's wrong. And you put all these confluences together, and not only are the attitudes changing, but you've also got someone whose hormone balance is slightly not natty or off. And, we've got some cases where people have contracted what they call, in the old school gym days, we used to call it bitch tits. Basically, if you're on juice or gear, and sometimes you would bulk up, you'd get kind of fat, and then your breast tissue would sort of also swell up. Definitely, this is the thing in Fight Club with Meatloaf, and yours truly, of course, have had a set of chesticles and moobs for quite a long time. Now, I didn't start hormone therapy until later in life, but I would say that my hormones were jacked, not in the swole way, the gains way, but they were off as a teen and even pubescent area. When I think about pubescent teen, I guess, when I was before teenage years, whatever it is, you get the idea. So looking back on whatever the exposure was, if it opens some of the physiology to take on some of the feminized features, simultaneously, that hormone in the water system is also sort of butching up our women. I don't have a problem with either of those things, honestly. I don't. What I have a problem is that people are sort of displacing a lot of the blame or whatever it is, a suspect or suspicion on other factors, without really looking at some of the other cores that are important here. Because that wouldn't be a popular idea. That would sort of cause a lot of concern to realize that the water that we have in our public water systems is not as great as we think it is. But it's something worth checking. Once I did start hormone therapy, I recommend it for everybody, but you need to have blood work, regular blood work, of course, to understand the sort of what's going on with your sort of different levels of hormones and enzymes and things that allow the regulation of it over a period of time. And for me, when I got tested, my male hormone level for testosterone was at 10, which normally should be around 250 to 300. I've probably been super low for most of my life. A lot of it has to do with the obesity, of course, and I'd say exposure to other affective variables in the environment and the cortisol. I would say that I've got overstimulated cortisol pumps. I must be a cortisol junkie at this stage of my life to create situations that just saturate me with cortisol, stress hormone. And that's concerning because now I'm getting to the point in my life where if I'm trying to put in the last third here, the third act, if I want to survive any of that, stress is one of the 4 killers. So if you're in a stressful situation, you're going to have to find a way to eliminate that, especially as you get older. Stress is probably one of the biggest ones. Been going through this interesting book here, Healing Back Pain. And this is not an endorsement. This is something I picked up. And this is from John Sarno, who's a doctor here that is basically doing the mind-body connection. And so far, what I've read is interesting. This idea of TMS, which is tension myoneural syndrome, is what he's laying it off on. Even herniated discs and things like that, he's still saying, no, it's related to the tension that's in the structure. So it's an interesting concept. I would say that if you're doing some sort of healing journey, if you have chronic pain, and I talk to a lot of other chronic pain sufferers, because I'm at chronic pain because of the things that have happened. It's if you know, it's one of those situations. Most chronic pain sufferers have a hard time expressing what they're going through to people that are not experiencing it. Even things like something like dealing with your nerves, in the sense that you might be suffering from diabetic-like symptoms. Type 2, type 1 really bad, where you get the neuropathy in your extremities. Your fingertips are dead, your toes are dead, and then eventually it can build up at your leg, cause some really serious nerve damage, and sometimes people end up getting amputation because they don't realize they get an injury because the sensation is dead or whatever it may be, and they might get a fissure or an infection that gets out of control. So it's not good. It's very bad shit. And it's so gigantically on the rise because of obesity rates, within my lifetime. So I do a lot of blood panels, and I try to do a lot of research along with also having a working relationship with my MD. And that takes time because, everybody's a bloody expert. I think younger doctors are more apt to adapt to these conversations because they understand that's sort of the nature of how people do things, especially in this country, the nature of our healthcare being sort of not a human right, but a privilege bestowed upon us by the elite lords who decided that we have to pay for everything in a system that basically is broken. Especially when it comes to medicine. It's just insane how many pigs are in the trough. In the days when I did insurance defense work, there was an opportunity to basically find out if medical billing from doctors or hospitals and stuff had been padded or erroneously submitted for some of these federal programs. They basically offer, at that time, they used to offer reward of recovery if they could make a suit or whatever it is. And it was pretty lucrative in that sense, but I mean, you had to get a lot of information and show a consistent pattern of basically fraud. And so the system itself is as crooked as a broke dog's dick. I mean, it's just messed up on so many different levels. We knew that became an issue for a lot of the things that we're dealing with. Fast forward to the beginning of the pandemic, to when we finally got a vaccine, that was a perfect example here. And we're on May Day, so we should be talking about labor anyway. A perfect example of management, or the owners or whatever else, getting to the front of the line, and they don't even deal with patients. And so you had hospitals that had a limited range of vaccines, and of course it was given to all the administrative mucky mucks, and even some of their country club golfing friends or whatever else. When people were complaining about the vaccine and saying, well, I don't know if it works and so forth, I said, well, if it didn't work, they would have given it to poor people first and then found out what would happen, and then the elite would have taken it. But those pigs are right in the front. They were, I mean, even those jackasses in Congress or whatever else, the same old notorious creeps that we all loathe, they were first in line to get on that vaccination aspect of it. So whether you like it or not, we know that's the kind of have some efficacy. In this case, if they can try to get us to do another booster, I'm sure they will. This will just be basically the new flu shot. Unfortunately, we were never able to reach herd immunity because a third of the people here are fucking idiots. And unfortunately, a large percentage of them are Leos, and that was the big beef between healthcare workers and Leos, is the fact that most of the Leos, it's a macho sort of culture, and I'm not going to wear a mask. Oh, it's cumbersome and all of this stuff. Hey, whatever. If you think that makes you better at your job, and that's where you want to draw the line in the sand, that is your choice. It got nothing to do with me, aside from the fact that it seems weird. Okay, and I think most people would agree it's odd, and it's really hard for us to think about. Gaston flags. When Leos fly Gaston flags, I'm always laughing at that because, don't tread on me. I'm like, dude, you are the tread. Well, who's treading on? Because somebody questioned your authority. That was a big one, right? Never question authority. Okay. Ooh, if that's not the slippery slope to fascism, I'm not exactly sure what else to tell you on that condition. All right, so completely lost the plot, skipping around as usual, and thinking about some of the ideas that we're kind of pushing through here, dealing with younger people and mint flavored shoes, understanding that the playing field has changed dramatically. In the old days, like I said, I could tell some jokes and be charming and use my lexical resource to, as they said in the Dead Poets Society, to woo, right? Why do we learn poetry? To woo women. But poetry is also important to woo yourself. You got to have some of that as well, I think. So don't be shy to go down to the so-called man cave and tear all that horse shit off the wall, that corporate fucking nonsense that someone told you was cool, and replace it with some valuable shit like books and knowledge and information, things that will turn your man cave into a study. That's what it used to be called, was the study. And you think about great thinkers, great writers, and so forth within our realms. They did a lot of their best work in their study, sometimes laying down on the couch. And of course, I'm talking about some of the counterculture intellectuals that have helped to put a lot of these things into motion, especially for those of us on the other side of the equation, when we are questioning things and trying to understand sort of what value or what do we bring to the table. If they will continue to squeeze us until it just fails, they just don't know any other way. They're at a certain level of the class structure that they are so insulated from our reality that it's hard for them to make sort of concrete judgments about the effects of policy and so forth that are screwing us over for a long time. We know this when they start talking about how we should be using money. And you think about some of the statements that have been made, you think, well, geez, where the hell is that guy do his shopping? They're so fucking far off the base. You realize that they're just actually disconnected. In order to get to that level of power in this country, you have to have a certain amount of money. And having that certain amount of money is going to insulate you from the struggles that most of us sometimes face. And that's sort of the frustration, is that we know that it could be easier. But people say, well, why make it easier? It wasn't easier for me. I'm closing the door behind me. That's the thing about people whose families are immigrants, but they're anti-immigration, which is always a bit shocking to me. If you've ever driven or flown over this country, you realize that, we got a lot of empty space. Go ahead and make it an immigrant town. Why not? Give it up, give them a space, take them in. That's the nature of Lady Liberty, right? Give us your tired and poor. And now we're being sort of picky choosy about it. And I understand why, because of the safety issues and so on. On the other hand, can we come up with some sort of solution that makes it better for everybody? But there's not much profit in that. There's a lot of morality in it. There's a lot of value in doing the thing that's right, but no profit, or very little profit. So why do it? That's the problem with commodification of every fucking thing around us. If we start putting dollar signs on everything, that clouds the morality. That clouds doing the right thing. That's why people sell out. That's why people are afraid to speak out. You think about all the shit that's gone ill and sideways, and it's very rare that we hear from, somebody who's big, like a celebrity, go out on a limb for fear of, losing their next box office deal or their next Grammy or whatever it may be. Again, they're also sort of insulated from the other realities that we're facing on the bottom here. They don't know what it's probably like to work for somebody you can't fucking stand. Maybe they do, but it's not that big a deal. I suppose they're getting a bunch of skrilla of money for what they're doing. But you try doing that for minimum wage or less than minimum wage, in some cases, it changes your attitude big time. So if we've got this apprehension sometimes to do the right thing because we're afraid we're going to shit the money bed, we've lost a big part of what we need to be doing to make things better. Well, people say, Rocco, you gotta get money to do things. Well, yeah, you're right. But time is also important. If you can convince people in your community to band together to make something happen, it will happen. But if you're the Lone Ranger out there trying to force it, it's sometimes a great challenge. And so you have to connect, you have to network, you have to reach out to people in the community. And this last couple of years, Panini, pandemic here, the pandemic panini, the shit sandwich, it's done a number for a lot of people. It's done a number on me. It's done a number on my wife or ex-wife, my marriage, my business. And I'm still doing fine. I mean, it's, I got a little bit of survivor's guilt. I've said that before because of how lucky I've been, considering the situation for some people who have lost loved ones and have lost, their entire fortune and so on. You can't give up, even though everything is set against you. Even the things that I'm kind of grousing about right now, talking about these, politicians that are so wealthy that they don't understand what it's like to kind of sweat whether or not you're going to make rent or you're going to pay for your medication. That's not the greatest country in the world. I'm sorry. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. And people that are propagating it know it's bullshit. And so they're willing to sleep at night on their very expensive pillow in their very expensive house because, hey, it's the game, right? It's not the game that I think we should be playing if we want to move forward. And we're going to just face greater challenges moving forward. The longer we hang around here, in whatever this is, that's the nature of it. It's going to get stranger and more dramatic and more drastic and bigger and badder in all ways. And I don't think we're ready for it. We're trying to catch up by adjusting some of our attitudes about misogyny and all these other things that are going on, but it's going to be a challenge. But that's part of the juice, right? We're here to be challenged. Again, if we're the spiritual body having a physical experience, then how else can we sort of make that worthwhile unless we challenge it a little bit? That's why going to the gym is important for some people, especially for those of us that are trying to make a difference in our livelihood and our mentality and our spirituality. It's that physical component of reminding us that we do have a physical presence here, and we should try to treat this temple with some kind of austere respect to make it live a long time. If my body is a temple, it's definitely. If you ever been to one of those punk rock venues and you go to the bathroom, like CBGB's or the old John Henry's in Eugene or the Dragonfly or the Exit, if you remember a punk rock bathroom back in the day, just covered in stickers and loogies and gum and just gross shit everywhere. They never clean it because it's disgusting. And it's amazing, like, especially when it turns into like a heritage venue, all the people that have gone through there that slap up their merch stickers and something. And it's a work of art, right? But it's still the toilet. So I think if my body's a temple, that's probably what it's been like. It's definitely been a punk rock venue. It's seen a lot of action. It's seen a lot of different sort of entertainment over the years. And again, it's not really the years, it's the mileage. Rode hard, put away wet more than once. So that's how it's going to roll, especially when you're king size muscle. Gotta really rethink that. Anytime somebody says that now out loud on a live, whatever else, I thought, well, I didn't do well thinking about that one. My version of king size, of course, is like, king size your garbage food at the drive-through, but in like a king size bed, right? So the main thing is, if you're a fat guy but you got traps, you might get a pass. So keep lifting, whatever it may be, hopefully. Going back to young people in their situation, dealing with the economics, dealing with the changes, check your hormones, everybody. Some people don't like the concept of it. Some people think I don't need to do that. What does it matter? Now that we've discovered microplastics within the human body, we've known for some time that microplastics in humans basically is an endocrine disruptor. Your endocrine system, of course, is controlling all of the sort of hormones and glands that make things happen. These chemical signals turned into electrical signals into the brain and into the body to have certain functions in your organs and so on. So when you are putting some sort of stress or interrupter or disruptor in the system, then the results can be skewed. And I would also say that having microplastics within the human body is also contributing to some of the gender bending. This is a suspicion. I don't have any valid way to test this. I'm basing this on the information that I know is correct from the research of microplastics as an endocrine disruptor. And then I'm thinking about the case reports of young people having some hormonal issues that were out of range related to environmental contribution, either within the water, where people were excreting a lot of birth control, and then people were taking it in and getting a slight effect. So that's also affecting the system. So you've got multiple points here in the biology, physiology aspect. Then you slap that manifold on top of the economic situation. And so now you've got young people who now have a little bit more freedom to sort of question where they're at on the scale of sexuality and gender. And some people have dug in deep very quickly and try to cut out some roles for themselves. Okay. It's hard for me to go too far away from the biology and also not to get too wound up about dealing with sort of the fallout from it. I'm lucky because I'm sitting here in my bunker. I don't get out much. It's not that much of an issue. You can talk shit about me. You can criticize me. You can insult me. You can try to close down my access to information or dispensing information. It's not going to change who I am. And, you know, I'm like a lot of you. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this so that I can make the right decisions, so that I can grow and adapt to the best of my ability as these things change in rapid fashion, of course, because that's part of Moore's law, right? We just keep doubling to the point where I won't be able to catch up. My other concern is the effect of what happens to language on thinking, on processing, on conceptualizing. Teaching in China for 15 years and looking at their main language of Putonghua, which is what we call Mandarin, which would be incorrect for them, but that's what we call it, is translated to the common tongue. So essentially, after the formation of the People's Republic, 1949, we had several different versions of Chinese that were floating around from different factions, including traditional Chinese and some minority versions as well. So they sort of decided to settle on a singular language. And basically what they did is they took the traditional Chinese script, which are characters that have many more pieces. They're very complex sometimes, ideograms based on conceptual ideas that are influenced by historical connotation as well. Ancient historical connotations. So even Chinese scholars sometimes don't know why their language does this. Sometimes it takes an outsider to sort that out. So in the process of simplifying the language, if I compare those learners that I've worked with who only have spoken Mandarin, Putonghua, common tongue, there is a limited range in their ability to conceptualize some abstract concepts because they have no language for them. And so they have no language for them. They cannot talk about them. And so they cannot really think about them or process them. And I would suppose that their visual language also processes different anyway than our sort of auditory language. If I compare them to the students who still maintain some of the traditional language, like in Cantonese, especially in Hong Kong, where they still use traditional characters, then we have a sort of another level that the language, the complex language, has brought to the student so they can think in a few steps in front of or ahead of the other person who doesn't have the language for it. The best example that I always give is the idea of perfect and standard. And I've said this repeatedly, and I'll repeat it again. If we look at the transliteration, when we literally translate it from our language into their language and vice versa. And so sometimes the the collocations or the phrasals are a bit off because it doesn't translate directly. But when we do transliteration, we come up with some unusual anomalies, and this is one that's, I think, is important. It's an indicator between perfect and standard. So in Putonghua, they would be in the same character. So think about that for a moment. Anybody here that has worked in the service industry or has traveled or understands the difference between perfect service and standard service, you know that's a pretty big fucking gap. There's a lot you can wedge in between what is standard, which to me is average and acceptable. So it's the bare minimum of what I expect when I pay for a service or experience, a hotel, whatever it may be. It's just the bare minimum. Exactly, it should function. It's clean, doors lock, got hot water, you know, the TV works, that kind of stuff. Not great. The bed sheets are like from prison, you know, that kind of shit. Talking like, you know, Comfort Inn at best, maybe Motel 6. Perfect service, though, if I think of a perfect situation, excuse me, or perfect hotel, then that's when you get like the, you know, the 10,000 thread or 3,000 thread count, you know, Egyptian cotton comforter sheets and, you know, plush robes. And, you know, I've stayed at a few places that were just so bloody amazing, including the Japanese one in Macau. I thought the name slips my mind. It, you know, it was like I'm living here, I'm staying here. And then, you know, you see the price and you're like, well, I guess I'm not staying here. It was practically perfect. It really was. I mean, they thought of just about everything to really show the nature of the hospitality. And I would say that my other experiences with other Japanese properties have been similar. But it's part of the culture. The service industry in China is still a work in progress because culturally, being of servitude is something to be looked down upon. All right, so you got cultural affective variables. You've got the simplification of the language, simplifying thinking. And so the reason why I threw that all into the cauldron here to burn, to celebrate May Day, is we are also simplifying the language in this country. We know for a fact that we've been screwing around with the language for quite a while, and we've not only weaponized some of the language through repetition and through serious sort of attempts to social engineer and study things. We see different examples, of course, of what's the result of the thumb nation, the text nation, or whatever else, and we have sort of the way that people speak to each other online, which is oftentimes simplified because, you know, who wants to scroll or slap all that shit in? Of course, you can do voice messages now, and we still carry that over. And when you talk to people about reading, they're like, I don't like to read. Why? Well, there's a lot of words I don't know. Why? I can just watch the movie or something. Well, yeah, sure. But you're talking about two different types of engagement, one that is passive and one that's interactive. When we read it, we tend to be more interactive. We look at the scans of the brain, we see them lighting up as they're reading because we have to put in the other components. Some people say, well, I can't read because I can't focus. Well, you have to find a way to build the habit to focus. And so maybe you need to read something different that will hold your attention. I don't recommend pornography. Just read the articles, right? If you're having trouble focusing, find something that you will be curious and excited about until you get kind of a habit of reading, at least get through a page without your mind taking off. It's kind of like meditation. So if we simplify the language, we're heading for simple thinking. And we have to say that we've crossed that a while back. And when I think of IQ numbers for us as Gen X in the 80s, floating around 126, and now we're somewhere down around 94. Now, granted, IQ is not everything that it could be, and it definitely marginalizes the people that don't have some experiences for the questions. We might think that the IQ level in Central Africa, I think it's around like 64. or 46 in some countries. I mean, it's pretty low, but they might have some sort of knowledge about the area that's not on the test. And so, we might be talking about people that were measured that maybe they're Bushmen or something like that. And so they don't understand what's happening on the exam, but if they can go out there and survive in the desert, then it's not a problem. I need a repetition buzzer for, I cannot stop myself for something. It is a habit that I've picked up somewhere along the line, and it's a habit that I want to break. It takes about 21 days, they say, to form a habit. It takes a bit longer sometimes to break one. So one of the things that has to happen is that I have to either paraphrase or come up with another tag instead of doing this. I'd say that Richard Piana also had the I know bug. I didn't even notice it. My ex-wife had to point that out to me. When I was watching his Generation Iron flick, he would say, I know. I always just think of him on YouTube in the early days when we were talking, hey, goddammit. He always opened up that way. What a beast. Another one bites the dust along with many. The elite bodybuilding world with the amount of egos and athletes that are pushing things to the limit, to the point of dying for the sport, which I know people debate, well, it's not a sport. I'm like, okay, fuck you, prep for fucking 16 weeks and try to recompose your body recomposition. Try to put on some muscle and try to take off some fat in that period of time. If you don't think it's a sport, then you haven't been challenged by the stuff that they put themselves through, especially their bodies. And so now the dead pool is much higher than it should be. So I hope that also sort of turns around somehow. It's not a good thing, because I know a lot of people in the industry over the years, even when I had my own supplement company, it's just sad to see. It's just not necessary. I think people, again, going back to my original concept here of commodification, the reason why it's so important for these guys to win in place, because the prize money has gone through the roof. And so now people are willing to gamble for, big money. Whereas in the old days, you were lucky if you got like, $75 in a trophy that, should have been for something else. And they put a bodybuilder on it, kind of funny thing. Anybody that remembers me from the Eugene days, you remember my powerlifting medal. It looked like a clay plate. It looked like Flavor Flav. I kind of wish I knew where it was, to be honest with you, but I used to wear that out with my wrestling mask and my cape, working the door for I can't think of his name. It's Chris, who started the zine that ended up becoming the Unseen, which I thought was pretty genius. It changed hands several times until it settled down. A couple of guys that I knew that played music together, they did a good job at it. But who reads zines anymore? I guess I should go to Portland and try to find out if they still got zines on the shelves down there. Every time I'm serious. I sit in my car. I sit out there in the driveway in the Cadillac and thinking, all right, I could go to Portland, and I just don't. Even though it's still got pals, is my favorite. I just don't have any desire or need to go over there. Which is too bad, because I remember when it used to be pretty awesome. And now it's like, I don't want to deal with that, And a lot of the gentrification that's happening here downtown, of course, is anticipating that money, migrating across the river for some of these companies and high-end apartment housing they put in. They're putting big gamble on that here, and it probably will happen for sure. I mean, the structures are already put in. It's just a matter of time. Our biggest conundrum here in the Couve is going to be the expansion of the I-5 bridge, which today I got stuck on. There was an ambulance parked 3/4 on the northbound lane crossing the river, and made it kind of dangerous to get on from Jansen Beach, little island there that has got some shopping. And I guess the ambulance broke down, and the safety guy, I looked to see if there was going to be a jumper or something, but that wasn't the case. You know, the bridge is over 100 years old in some places. And you see some of the old photos of it backed up, and it's always been a choke point. And to think that they're going to try to redo it over a period of years, I mean, they had the money before, and apparently somebody here on city council got out of it. You know, the biggest fear, of course, is if we bring public transport like the MAX, the train from Portland to here, is that it'll just be hobo transport, you know, transient transport. I don't know about that. That's what the powers be are concerned about. But it would be nice if there was the train. I mean, here we got to go across the bridge, go to Jansen Beach, and then catch it. You know, it's just not great. But if it rolled right into downtown, people probably use it, right? Hard to say. It's going to be a mess when that happens. Hopefully, I won't be here. I'll be someplace else. Maybe back in Siam or Bali or some other tropical breeze place, and maybe not. You know, today I picked up a few more things for downstairs and formulating how I'm going to redo all of that. So maybe I just hang out. I got everything. You know, my ex-wife is right. She's like, you got everything here you need. Why do you need to go anywhere? I'm like, yeah, that was kind of my argument to you, babe, but you got to do what you got to do, right? It's not easy being a shitty husband. You know, when you do dirty on your partner, it's not good. You can't ever really recover from. And again, it's not being authentic. You got to be honest. You got to be straight up with what's going on and have those discussions. It's tough. I know it's tough. People go through their entire, lifetime, never sort of fully emerging, so to speak, because they're terrified of what their partner will think. So conditional and unconditional love, you make the decision for yourself. But you got to love yourself unconditionally and be willing to roll the dice or take the hits in that case. Otherwise, you might have some difficulty. What else we got here? I'm gonna do one more clip. All right, let's do this last clip here. No, maybe should go. Okay, we won't do that clip. Success and progress, right? People are like, it doesn't sound great and you got a lot of errors. I said, hey, it's having fun. I'm just having fun, trying to entertain myself, entertain my friends, and disseminate some information that I think is valuable to my tribe, to my people, my peeps. That some I don't even know. When I check the download map for this thing, it amazes me that somebody would do that. So I appreciate that. I really do. You unknown stranger, letting my dulcet, shrill tones. My voice is described as shrill, which is amazing because that gives you the idea of the acoustics that the human skull produces. When I'm talking to you, and even when my voice sort of drops a little bit because of the allergy season, to me it sounds deep and rich and lush and Then I listen to the playback and I hear the same thing you hear right now, which is squeak, 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 squeak. And that's what made my money in China. I could be teaching in a university or in a demo someplace, and they could hear me, all the way down the street, and they would bring me business. People would come and recruit me. I'm always shocked when people can't sort of project their voice, but having that shrill tone sort of cuts through that. Granted, I'm jealous because I grew up with guys that smoked non-filtered pell-mell cigarettes and had a bottle of old homesteader rye underneath the radio board, and they would be half in the bag smoking cigarettes and drinking bourbon or rye whiskey and then doing the news or whatever else. It was a different time then. Of course, the FCC would have lost their mind by like can promise you, the different radio stations I went to, especially for good old boys, that's how you did it. You just took it easy. You told people what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. How y'all doing? There you go. Welcome to KPXX. This is old Tex here, and we're going to be talking today to Larry from down there at the hardware store. Apparently, it's just that kind of shit. So we'll leave it at that. All right, let's put everything back in the box if we can. I probably should start taking notes as I'm doing this. I realized since I didn't come here with my notes, I was gonna rant and rave about the new Batman because I just got a discussion with a couple of buddies about that, and I thought, well, that's low hanging fruit, man. It really is. So I'm not gonna say too much about it until people talk about it, and then maybe I'll put in my 2 cents along with everything else, whether you want it or not. So instead, we've sort of touched upon a couple of key things that we might want to consider with the gender sort of extension related to the sexuality extension here. And that is, let's double check the effective variables from the environment for endocrine disruptors. Are a lot of these people who are considering jumping around on the scale somehow, is it something that is coming within them, or is it because we've sort of greased the rails a little bit culturally, but also with the environmental situation of having too many female hormones in the waterways or water systems? Or is it plastics that have interrupted the endocrine system in young people and sort of maybe turn the switches in different ways so that they're more adaptable to whatever it could be? Is it, again, the culture shift in some aspects that we've created an economic system that has sort of forced people into group situations? And so why not be polyamorous if that's how you are? Think about, going back to the late 60s, early 70s, a lot of hippies and stuff were also very exploratory. And a lot of that also had to do with information and economics. So we're just seeing sort of a repeat of it, but people have a tendency to forget, even within their own lifetime, how shit went down. And then they look at the current situation and go, oh, what's going on? No. There is sort of a causality that does happen, whether you're jumping timelines or not. Some of the basic components are put in together. Check your hormones. If you have an opportunity to do it, find out what's going on, what kind of stuff you got going on for male hormone, female hormone, growth hormone, any of the other sort of hormones like your cortisol levels, things like that. Anything that's going to cause some sort of change in your behavior, your mood, or your physicality to your organs and so on. And so obviously cortisol being the stress hormone, having too much of that is not good. And so that relates to a lot of other problems. And so this is me, your sort of unofficial traditional Chinese medicine doctor who does a lot of Western research as well and makes a comparison between the two, because I think they have to be sort of merged together to be more effective. They can augment each other instead of sort of battling each other or presenting sort of other solutions. And so that's always about holistic sort of concepts. And so if we change our approach for some of these things, like I know a lot of people that have been misdiagnosed in some different ways, especially like this thing with the back pain. I mean, the first sort of deep imaging that they got, they're like, okay, you're gonna have to send you off for surgery. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. Well, yeah, but it'll help you. I'm like, well, yeah, but it might not help me either. And instead I've got pins in my lower lumbar. I don't think that's what I want to do right now. So I've chosen a different path of healing that is more in tune with my values. And so is it going to be a longer process? Yeah. But is what I'm doing less invasive? Yeah, I think so. Less invasive than putting screws back there. I think anytime that you get cracked open, that's not a good idea. You're rolling the dice. I mean, I had the first anesthesia I ever had was the colonoscopy that they gave me last year. And yeah, that anesthesia is juicy shit. That was good stuff. It's like, okay, enjoy your nap. Yeah, what the fuck you talking out about? And then, hey, all right, Mr. Galloway, you're done. Boom. What happened? Well, apparently they probed my ass and they probed my throat. Hopefully they didn't use the same device. And if they did, I would notice anyway. As I was out, I mean, like a blink of loss of time. I've got it written down what that anesthesia is. That's some good stuff, man. I can see why people are like, yeah, I'll take a nap, no problem. Having that sort of ability to check those kind of items, I think, are important, especially for longevity and aging. If you're younger, I don't think it's that much of an issue unless you are being a knucklehead and playing around with PEDs. And so unless you are, I don't understand why any young person would do it. I think they're just monkeying around or copying, people that they like and so on. You can take PEDs, but it doesn't mean that you are going to be number one. There's a lot more to it. It's only one small piece, and it's too easy to throw that out the window when you see somebody who is yoked or jacked or has tremendous amount of gains. You can lay it off on PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, okay, PEDs. And so that PEDs didn't put them in the gym at 4 a.m. consistently. So you gotta have those components as well to make it effective. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. But you need the blood work to find out. So if you have a chance, do the blood work. If you're a young person, I wouldn't be too concerned about it because your system is still developing. So don't fuck it up any more than it already is from pollution, the environment, and other factors that we probably are unaware of. Probably all the FM, Wi-Fi signals or EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. I mean, that's a discussion for a whole nother series of shows. If we look at some of the data related to the effects of EMF along with other frequencies on the human body. People say, okay, why do you know so much about all this stuff? Well, I'll tell you why. When I was in China, I used to do a lot of technical editing for doctors. And so doctors have to publish just like they do here, right? They publish studies and so forth. And so they're always trying to get it peer reviewed and they want it, peer reviewed in English. And so I get the stuff, it comes to me in Chinese and sort of Chinglish, broken English. And then I take that and between the transliteration and sort of the paraphrased version to come up with a technical edit that they can submit for publishing as research. And so they're a lot more apt to research these other components that we're referring to, as opposed to what we do, where we sort of focus on something that we can, give a $300 prescription to, which is great for alleviating the symptoms, perhaps, but then you get all the symptoms that are contributed to it. And a lot of people get misdiagnosed. A lot of people get the wrong medication. There's a lot of, when they sort of cross-contaminate each other, it's not the right, but it messes with the efficacy between the two drugs. When they overlap and they shouldn't have it. That's again from caregiving. When I used to take care of Frank, this guy he was a pill hustler at different doctors. And of course, one didn't know what the other hand was doing. And, he was up and down all the time. I'm like, oh, it's gotta be mixed medication. Sure enough, it was. So these are things that have to be sort of also put into the hopper as well when we're trying to come up with a way to last as long as we can. Since they screwed us this long, since they've made us nibble on the shit sandwich for this long, I am determined to stay around as long as I can until the last dog is hung. And I might be the dog that they're going to hang, but I'm in for the long haul. I didn't used to be. I was like a lot of you guys thinking that I was going to check out here about 25 or 26, right? Whoops, 30, boom, oh, 40. And then luckily I went to China, and that changed me. The Manchurian candidate. They proved to me that the value of longevity, the long term, the long game is important. And the only way you can play the long game is by taking care of yourself and your body, which means hydrating, self-care, checking your blood, check your blood panels, be inquisitive, ask, don't just take it at face value. Don't be an asshole going on YouTube and then come up with some bullshit. I mean, do granted peer review research, do the process if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. You can still have a conversation, but it's probably useful to understand what it is that you're looking at in the blood panel and see how you can make changes in your life that will help you. And sometimes it's just something simple as nutrition and dietary changes. Dietary changes can make dramatic effect on what's happening in your body, because that's what you run on, your fuel. And so if you improve the quality of fuel, you should improve the quality of your life. I'll leave it at that. Thanks for your time. Thanks again for your support. Keep checking in. It's a work in success. And so we'll try to improve. If you have any questions or comments, just hit me up, DM me. I'm looking forward to addressing it, and I'm looking forward to meeting some people and talking to them sometime soon. All right. Cheers.